It is your boy, Black Ronin, back on at it again. What another banger and fire video for y'all's out there today. There, y'all. Welcome on back to the channel. But guys, it is your boy's birthday. Your boy just turned 26. I feel good, guys. You know, there's one flex that I do have out of anything. I'm so glad I am in good health. I know I'm not the biggest, strongest dude walking out here, but I am so glad that I am in better health than most people, because a lot of motherfuckers out there in my age range, they are so big as hell nowadays. Like, it's crazy how fast people fall off after high school. I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of one of those kids, like, when I got out of high school, because, like, growing up as a teenager, I was very, very disciplined. I was very pushed, you know, a certain type of way, within the base, like my health. And I was always forced to drink a lot of water, you know, drank plenty of water, never really drank soda and stuff like that. Just healthy habits, you know, like I was just always pushed onto that. So after high school, you know, you're not as active as much anymore. So you get out of high school and you just go savage. Oh man, I'm gonna eat this, eat that. I'm gonna just not care. I ain't finna exercise no more like that. You know, I was so happy for that freedom, but then it came back to bite me in the ass later, because when you hit your, I'm gonna be real with you, when you hit about 23, that's really when your life decisions finna really hit you. Not like crazy, but for me, it hit me early. When I got a little chubby, I was like, that, I don't see how niggas be doing that shit. Big as hell, like bro, how do you have energy, bro? Cause like, I'm not used to like my energy levels and my hormones dropping like that. I was like, that shit fucked me up, fucking up my motivation, everything, you know. So that was not a good point in my life. So I got out there on body game, started working out and being more active again, you know, just 3 days a week. And hey, I've been feeling the best ever since. I ain't even got the best diet. You know, I just got my supplements and tried my best to drink a lot of water. That alone would just take you so much farther. But anyway, enough about rambling about health and stuff, even though I'm very, very proud of that. But anyway, guys, you know, I recently saw a post from my homeboy. He had posted on Facebook, right? And I didn't even know my friend, you know, he got a kid and everything. You know, he got a mixed child, Mulatto. So I'm black and white. And it just got me thinking, man, you know, I got to really help out a lot of people out there who maybe want to get into a interracial relationship, have a family and all that stuff. I got to speak on some things from a light-skinned perspective, because a light-skinned person is not going to have the same exact experience as a dark-skinned or even brown-skinned person walking around. Like, I need to really let y'all know that, you know, there are some big differences, especially here in America, and definitely location does matter, but I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But you know, there's things that I just really do gotta inform people, because it's a lot of people jumping into it, and I feel like they need to really communicate with other people who are light skinned or mixed race, you know, or like just mulatto, you know, those type of people. Even though you don't see them on the regular, you know, I think that's very, very important to see outlooks on life, and you know, basically having a real expectation compared to what you see on TV and the movies and everything, because it's really a different reality than a lot of people would think. And I'm even going to touch on some spiritual stuff as well that may also come along with it. But let's get on into it, guys. Now, mainly I'm going to gear this to more darker skin, so basically dark skin and you know, white women, you know, so those two combos. Because in the black community, like with dark skinned dudes, like I noticed that especially like with other communities like around them, I noticed that they really hype them up and they cheer them on a lot more, and they really pursue them like just a lot more, like from what I noticed. Now keep in mind, I grew up on the East Coast, so now I will say this: I never been jealous of anybody. My parents raised me to never hold jealousy or hate in my heart, so I just told, hey, maximize what you got and keep it pushing, you know. So that's the type of person I always been. So I will see from a lot of other communities, they will gas up and really cheer on like the dark skinned male, but they don't really do the same for like the light skinned dude. Don't get me wrong, yeah, we still get our praise, but I have noticed that dynamic, and I think it's very, very important to pay attention to, because if you have a light skinned child, you know, you need to understand There's one big thing that you need to really, really understand. Not a lot is really known about you, and you will be the most hated person walking around. I think y'all really do need to understand that. Which is why a lot of people be like, oh, don't race mix and all that. No, that's not true. You know, if you maximize yourself, you put your best foot forward, and you really know your type of lane as a man or a woman, and you know the location as well that can really maximize yourself, you can do pretty good. But you have to be socially aware of that if you are going to get into this type of relationship, and especially if it's in an area where there's not a lot of light-skinned people or mixed people around, you're kind of really that only one doing it like that. I think you need to be extra cautious if you are going to make that decision. But you definitely want to do this in a multicultural society for sure. And I honestly, I would say fuck the East Coast, because that's where I'm from. No shade or nothing, but it's just like, if I'm gonna raise a light-skinned child, especially a son, I wouldn't want to do it on the East Coast. I would take his ass to like the Midwest, maybe Oklahoma, fucking Colorado, definitely, you know, out there. West Coast, that's what I would stick to. If you got like a light-skinned son, I would take him around there, you know, if you looking you know, like, just so he'll have better success. Because I'm gonna be real with you, yes, like I get success back home in you know, back home in Florida where I used to live over there. Like, yeah, I got my success, but at the same time, like, you need to know, like, also there's another thing you guys need to understand too. A light-skinned person is the most fetishized person and most hated person walking around. You need to really understand that. And especially if you got a son out there, you know, you need to let them know in advance, listen, you're going to be the most hated person, hated man in the room. Like, yeah, you're going to be the most hated man in the room at all times. And if you show any type of talent, be ready for everybody to come shitting on it real quick. You know, the last thing that's going to make anybody, you know, just like, I mean, let me rephrase that. The last thing anybody really wants is to see a minority within a minority outshining everybody, and with confidence, you know, because you don't understand these things at first, but you're going to notice this as you grow up. Now, I didn't realize that this was such a big deal until I gotten older. And most importantly, from seeing other light-skinned dudes on I'm basically like going on YouTube, and they're sharing all their stories. I was like, oh damn, this shit ain't just coincidental. Like, this is like a real thing. And once I learned that aspect and that dynamic, I was like, oh, so we really are a target out here. So you need to teach your child that, number one, if you're light-skinned, you're going to be the biggest target out here. And it's for good reason. You know, think about it. You know, you're basically showing everybody that you are the future, and you're what's going to lead to everybody else, you know. And for a lot of people, they ain't ready for that, depending on your location. And there's also extreme jealousy that comes with that. If you're a light-skinned dude, you're going to put man and woman in their feelings. I'm still going through that shit to this very day. It's honestly hilarious at this point, but you'll get to a point as a light-skinned dude, you're just going to laugh at the shit because it's really petty at this point. But, you know, you need to understand, you know, if you're going to have some light-skinned kids, especially you raising a son, you need to put them on game from an early start very, very quickly, because, you know, it's going to be dudes in his own community that look like him, but they're going to be darker skinned. And yeah, like, they gonna feel some type of way. They gonna try to make guard. They gonna try to do some crazy shit. Now, I'm not trying to throw shade to my dark skinned brothers out there, but hey, some of y'all really be doing the most out there. Now, I do got some homeboys that dark skinned. They got my back. Some of my closest friends, 100%. But you definitely do gotta keep that in mind if you are gonna have a light skinned dude, you know, like as your son, because when he get out there and he go step into the black community, you know, he needs to really like be on top of everything. He needs to be very, very aware of his surroundings. He needs to be very, very aware that, hey, motherfuckers will try you if you stunting with a beautiful woman of that community. And that's really any type of woman, honestly. You know, this is why we have the best leeway to go anywhere, because we're used to so much hate on either side. You know, a white guy gonna hate on us, but he ain't gonna go to the extreme of some dark skinned dudes, because some dark skinned dudes, it's really an East Coast thing. Like, if you stunt too hard on the East Coast, motherfuckers will try you and try to fight you and shit. you know, like especially when it come down to women, like they are so childish on the East Coast. It's really hilarious. But again, that's not everybody. But like, if you really mind your own business, bro, like you should be okay. But on the East Coast, it really is extreme, which is why I don't recommend raising a light skinned child, especially a dude, on the East Coast. Take them over there to the Midwest, take them to the West Side, West Coast. I would say that's a better area. Colorado, Vegas, much better place to raise a child like that. So just be aware of that type of dynamic and the hatred that's gonna come with it. But it's gonna come off very subtle. Like, and also, you're really gonna experience the most hate as a light skinned dude when you start to outshine everybody. This is very important. If you have a light skinned son, you need to really teach him to not be the loudest one in the room, be your authentic self, because you're already an authentic looking person walking around. So you might as well be an authentic person internally as well. So have those dynamics going. But most importantly, a lot of women get pissed with this, but I'm gonna say this shit anyway. But you're gonna need to really teach your light-skinned son to show off at all costs. Like, anything physical, that motherfucker need to be the best at it. Like, I'm so serious. And excuse that plane flying over up here fucking up my shit. But anyway, so you gotta teach him to show off. The second you see talent in a light-skinned like kid, like especially your son, you need to really push him on that talent and making sure that he becomes the best at that, or at least close to it. Like I really want to stress that to y'all, because like a light-skinned dude that's showing talent, that can take you a long way. And that's a really big flex to have in your family, because like a dark-skinned dude, he's gonna have like a lot of people cheering him on. Like other groups, other community, they're very quick to cheer on. Even white dudes, I've seen this shit personally. They're very quick to cheer on a dark, like like a darker skinned man, and boost up his ego. Like, I've seen that shit in real life. They'll do that shit a lot more compared to a light skinned dude, because if you boost our ego up too much, this is why it comes off a lot of times. And then we ain't really got like a solid, like a bunch of light skinned dudes really coming together talking about shit. Because of that, we can come off a little socially awkward at times. This is just what happens when you are naturally more attractive than a lot of people in general, and you walking around with some interesting genes in you, so that's just by default. But at the same time, in terms of confidence, you're gonna have to get it differently compared to any other group of men, because a lot of niggas really do hate on us, but it don't matter the race. You're gonna, like I said before, you was the most hated motherfucker walking the planet of the earth. I said this shit a long time ago. Motherfucker, you is the Indominus Rex of this world. So stun on these motherfuckers. I don't give a damn, man and woman, fuck it. Because everybody finna hate on you. It's gonna get to a point when, like, let's say if you showing out so much, woman gonna hate on you because, like, damn, he gonna draw too much attention. He got the looks too. That's a deadly combo. So a lot of women will reject you for that reason. So you need to keep that in mind, which is why I say you need to be in a very multicultural either environment, or you have to be somewhere where, people like you are very widely accepted and you're looked up upon in society. It's not like here in America parts of America where a lot of people fear that you're going to be the new norm. And that's a threat to a lot of people. So you need to definitely keep that in mind and understand, if you're a light skinned dude, I know there's a trend with a lot of us. I mean, not every last one of us, but we don't have really a big group of friends like that. Not because we're like just odd, different. Well, yeah, we are different type of people, but it's just like a lot of us tend to really cling and really go with, the most realest people around us in our circle, which is make us really the most powerful walking around, if I'm keeping it honest with you, because we don't really care about certain things that a lot of other groups and different races care about. We just care about the realest motherfuckers around us. And because I look around, I see a lot of people, they want to fit in, they want to do all this shit. That's a lot of other communities walking around. I see that with the white people. I see that a lot of black people. I'm not saying you don't see that with a lot of light-skinned dudes, but at the end of the day, we really kind of in our own lane. And because we stand out in such a different type of way, especially in certain type of areas, We really go where the energy best reciprocates with us. And I'll also teach your light skinned son. Don't get me wrong, I'm gonna get to the daughters in a second, but I would definitely teach your light skinned son, most importantly, when it comes down to women, take your time and get yourself the best quality partner as possible, because like, you're gonna have the biggest demographic. And I think this is another thing too, when it comes down to dating and just overall attraction, women will find you very, very attractive, but at the same time, there is a price to pay with that. If a woman sees that a man is shining too hard, which a lot of us light skinned dudes tend to do, that could come off as pretty threatening, and she doesn't want what comes along with that. So she'll reject you for that reason. So keep that shit in mind too. Another thing you need to be aware about, if you do have a light skinned mulatto kid, especially a son, the alphabet community, I don't know what it is, but they are drawn the most to us. It's really annoying. Listen, no hate to y'all, to the alphabet community, but you need to understand, like, you're going to have a lot more of attention coming your way from other dudes than other women by a long shot. I don't know what it is. It's very strange, but you need to keep that in mind too. So, you're walking around, you're this light-skinned dude, a rarity, walking around looking decent. You're going to get attention from all different people. So you need to really teach your son and also your daughter as well to guard your sexual energy, especially if you're trying to raise a straight son, or a straight daughter. You need to put them in an environment where, they're going to tend to do the best at, for the opposite sex. So that's very, very important as well. And now, it basically just depends on, how you're trying to raise a child. Some of y'all don't care. I see a lot of people, they just get together because, the vibe is good. See, I'm a little different as a light skinned dude. I look at the spirituality of people. I look at who I best connect with. I look at the emotional connection. I don't just look at the physical of a person. I really got to know how that person really operates. So I take my time to get to know people. And also I take my time to, really get to know a woman before I go lay with her, because you do not want to go savage out here nowadays. And listen, in a time and day and age where everything can be going good in a relationship, and then your partner or girlfriend just vanishes out of nowhere, you don't know why. You got to be very, very extra cautious out here as a light-skinned dude, and just like for your children as well. So this is why I say environment is very, very important. Multicultural places tend to be the best for us, because we'll see other light skins like ourselves. We'll see, like everybody out there, so that's very, very important. So, and then when it comes down to spirituality, this is another thing too, I got to mention why race mixing can get pretty frowned upon. Now, when it comes down to like your spirituality, I'm going to touch into some really like deep shit. So I got to talk about the term Nephilim. Now, what is Nephilim? It actually mentioned in the Bible. Now, guys, I'm Christian, so, I gotta put this out there. So to some people on a spiritual sense, you may come off as a even massive spiritual threat, because the term Nephilim, when you go back in time, like basically like Nephilim is basically means giant. So giants, now some people are gonna be like, giants, well, I mean, what does that have to do with a light-skinned mulatto person, multi-generational type people? What does that have to do with us? Let me explain. So with the term Nephilim, if you do the research, it's basically the blend of fallen angels and also the humans. So basically the fallen angels, if you also took a look at the book of Enoch, not saying that that's biblically true, but it just goes into depth of basically like what happened before the flood. So some people also, like, guys, this could be a big fear of a lot of people in a spiritual sense, but the term Nephilim is basically means race mixing between the fallen angels, who are meant to serve and watch and protect, but they end up race mixing with the humans and all the wives and stuff on Earth, and then they created these hybrid giants, the Nephilim, and there is a big price to pay. That's why the flood had came. Now, I'm not saying that that's biblically like super biblically accurate, but as you go through life and And as I just go more and more and I look at things on a spiritual level, it starts to make a bit more sense. Again, not saying that that's factual and that's biblical. I'm not saying that. But the term Nephilim is in the Bible. You can look it up. But with that said, on a spiritual sense, walking around, even though the flood happened, washed away all the corruptness and sin. Well, I shouldn't say everything, but you know, that term Nephilim and those bloodlines could potentially still happen to seep into the rest of the world because, you know, best believe, even though the flood and everything happened, you don't know what could have survived after that. You know, like you just don't know. Yeah, it wiped out everything, but the DNA and that bloodline, everything could have transcended to who knows how many other people. And then on top of that, who knows the amount of people that had that contaminated bloodline, you know, that hopped on Noah's Ark, you know, all the people and stuff. I don't know, you know, like you just don't know, you know, and everything. So there's just a lot that comes with it that probably fears and terrifies a lot of other groups of people on a spiritual sense as well. I'm probably one of the only people that really going to throw that out there, but you know, and when you think about it too, really take a look at some of like mulatto dudes out there, like in the NBA. You ever notice how they're just freakishly tall and just for no reason? Or some of us, you know, like just light skins and stuff, multicultural, or, you know, just flat out biracial mulatto. You ever realize how sharp we tend to be at times just for no reason? Like, this is why some people say, man, these people ain't human, like Chris Brown. You know, you ever notice that, you know, like that type of trend and stuff? So basically what I'm saying, we may contain a potential higher amount of Nephilim blood in us. I'm not saying that that's factual. I'm not saying is that true, but to a spiritual sense, that might terrify a lot of people. So keep that in mind too. Now, another thing too, I got to get into with us light skins walking around. I got to get into the woman now. Now, with the woman, you fall into honestly the better category, I would say. Don't get me wrong. Like us men, like I'm very, very proud to be a light skinned, you know, melanated man walking around here in America. But I ain't gonna lie, the woman has it much better. The light skinned woman, I would argue, if you hit the gym, take care of yourself, you have it just as good, maybe even better than a white girl walking around, you know. Especially if you carry yourself on a spiritual type of level, you can go very, very far. I notice with light-skinned women, they tend to go very, very far very quickly. It's not really the same for a light-skinned man. You know, us men in general, we got to work hard. But as a light-skinned man, there is so much slander on our names. We're going to have to work even more harder, you know, because we're the last group of men that's going to get support like that. You know, like it takes time for us to really grow and really get out there. But a light-skinned woman, man, she's still gonna have similar experiences to a light-skinned man, and also, you know, some of the things that we go through, you know, because I be seeing a lot of them tend to be bisexual and, you know, kind of all over the place with their sexuality at times, and that's due to the like even more crazier hypersexualization of the light-skinned woman and pushed into the spotlight heavily. So it makes sense why she tends to move the way that she moves. But again, that's not all of them. This is why it's very, very important to raise a light-skinned child on basically with a good head on their shoulder. You know, if you're a strong person spiritually and you're Christian, it can work out, but you gotta make sure your partner is also on that same type of level as well, you know, that you get with that white woman. So yeah, you gotta make sure that all that, you know, is on point before you decide to go lay down and, you know, have a light-skinned child. In my personal opinion, I think that's how you should do it. You know, and then another thing I would say too, with a light-skinned woman, understand she's gonna get the most hate as well from other women, and it's gonna get so bad because, like, guys, other women will constantly turn light-skinned women against the light-skinned men. And men will try to spin this shit too as well, you know, so you got to watch out for that. It's so many forces going against the light-skinned mulatto people that a lot of people really just can't understand. So just keep that in mind. Like, you bring one of these kids into this world, you need to be very, very mindful of the environment. You need to be very, very mindful of, you know, the forces that is coming against that child. You need to be very, very strong with your family as well, you know, because we're the last group of people, other than I would say the woman to an extent. It's weird with the woman. It's like she'll get the praise going up and, really push to the highest heights very fast and quickly compared to a lot of other women. She's really up there with the white women as well, neck and neck. And we talking about social status and everything. But at the same time, it's very, very important to really make sure she got a good head on her shoulder so she doesn't get lost and corrupted out here. That's a big problem as well. So pay attention to that. And then for the light-skinned son, he's going to have to work the most hardest out here if he wants to, really get something of value in terms of woman. Now, this is why I say location matters the most with us. If you got a son, you have to move a little different. And you need to make sure that he's in his masculine frame at all times and understand that the world hates him the most. I would argue we're more hated than anybody of darker tone. Now it's weird with us because we're still the most fetishized of a lot of different men, 100%. But there's a massive strong hatred toward us, towards us. So I would say if you got a light-skinned son, it's very, very important that I feel like he'll do the best as an entrepreneur. I would instill certain habits, maybe start him a YouTube channel, get him used to being disciplined with posting content. Doesn't have to be with himself on camera or nothing like that, but get him used to making AI content or AI music and just getting him moving a certain type of way. So when he gets older, he's already established and got something going for him, because if you're trying to raise them up and trying to go through the normal hierarchy and everything in our society, I don't think that's a smart idea, in my personal opinion. It's a lot of spitefulness. I'm not saying that he can't make it 100%. Like anybody can make it. They put the work in and go for it. Anybody can make it, but just understand, it's going to be a lot of hate coming his way and you need to prepare him for that. But entrepreneurship is definitely a smart option. Especially as that kid showing talent. Is that boy showing talent, you need to make sure that he has a good entrepreneur mindset. You need to diversify him from an early age. So when he gets older, he doesn't have to worry about college. He doesn't have to worry about certain things. I know a lot of y'all motherfuckers out there, y'all be like, oh, I want my kid to go to college. Not every kid is meant to go to college, both men and women, Like some of us are meant to just create and build. Like I'm doing myself. I do this YouTube shit. You see how very articulated I am, the way I be speaking out here. Guys, there's not a lot of motherfuckers out here that can do what I do and do that shit so sharply. So this is why I say you need to guys, you really need to know your kids and know what they're going to be up against. Now, I'm not saying get out here and go fear monger them. Absolutely not. But just make sure they're aware of things, I think that's very, very important because a lot of us light skins, we tend to grow up not really thinking nothing much, but then we get older and we see how life really is after high school and after that back. Well, we see how it is, in high school and I would say middle school, well, for a good portion of our life in school, but we never really think nothing of it, but we don't notice it until we get out of high school. That's when things really shift. That's when that's when dynamics of life really hits us the most. And thanks to YouTube, we seeing more and more people. We damn, we can actually all relate on that shit, But that's really all I gotta say. Let me know what you guys think. This is how I think you should raise a light-skinned mulatto person or just a light-skinned person in general. If you do decide to have kids and everything, interracial, or if your wife is light-skinned, husband light-skinned. If your child comes out light-skinned, mixed-looking, this is how you need to approach them, 100%. In my personal opinion. And like I said before, I think the woman, if you got a woman, you're going to have a lot more leeway. I would say with her, just make sure she's locked in on the spiritual sense. And also just understand, like I said before, I understand you fall into a category where you don't quite fit in nowhere. But at the same time, you still got a group of people really do rock with you. So don't forget your blackness. But at the same time, don't forget everything else that had created you. So basically trying to raise your child so they don't be self-hating and resenting their own race, or part of their own race as they get older, So very, very important topic. I hope this resonated with a lot of people. I hope I hit everything I need to talk about today, but it is your boy Black Ronin. Like and subscribe, share. Y'all take it easy.